Ever find yourself scrolling through pages of results online and wonder, how do they make this so smooth?
Hmm? Yeah.
Well, today we're diving into the nitty-gritty of PHP pagination. It's all about making your web applications feel as snappy as a caffeinated scroll.
Right on. Speed is key, especially when you're dealing with mountains of data.
And to guide us through this quest for speed, we've got an expert who can untangle even the most head-scratching code. Welcome to the deep dive.
Glad to be here. I love digging into these kinds of clever coding tricks.
Today, we're zeroing in on a particularly elegant method, one that uses a single MySQL stored procedure to handle pagination. Imagine, if you will, a website for a university. They've got a massive database of student records, thousands of them.
Right, tons of data to wrangle.
Now imagine trying to load all of that at once.
Well, that would be, yeah, a recipe for disaster. Slow loading times, frustrated users. Not good.
Exactly. It's like trying to water a small plant with a fire hose, way too much, too fast.
And that's where pagination swoops in to save the day, right?
Precisely. Instead of drowning the system, we're slicing that data into bite-sized, manageable chunks.
Or pages, as we like to call them. Each page loads quickly, giving users a much smoother, more enjoyable experience.
No more staring at the spinning wheel of doom. So let's talk about how this single stored procedure actually pulls it off.
Well, the secret sauce is, like you said, a stored procedure. We're looking at one in particular called getStudentsAndCount.
Catchy. What makes this stored procedure so special?
It's like a multitasking wizard. First, it fetches the specific student records we need for a particular page. Think of it as like a librarian, quickly locating the exact book you're looking for on a specific shelf.
Okay, I can visualize that. Find the right shelf, grab the right book.
But here's where it gets even cooler. At the same time, this procedure also figures out the total number of student records. It's like the librarian also knowing exactly how many books are in the entire library.
Whoa. So it's doing double duty, grabbing specific data and telling us how much data there is overall.
You got it. And it does it all in one fell swoop. This stored procedure takes two parameters, start and offset. They're like the coordinates on a map that tell the procedure exactly where to look in the database.
So start says begin here, and offset is like grab this many records.
Yep. Think of it like this. Start at record number 10 and fetch the next 20 records.
Clever. So it's only grabbing the data we need for that specific page. But what about calculating the total number of records? How does it handle that at the same time?
Well, right after it fetches those student records, it zips off and runs a second query, a super fast one, to count all the student records in the entire table.
At a quick head count.
Exactly. And we need that head count, that total number, to build those handy pagination links you see at the bottom of web pages, page 1, 2, 3, and so on. It tells users how many pages of results there are in total.
That makes sense. So we're getting two crucial pieces of information for the price of one. Wow, it's like getting a 2-for-1 deal at the database. That's pretty slick. But why go through all that? Why not just make two separate calls to the database, one to grab the data and one to get the count?
Well, think of it this way. Every time we ping the database, it's like, making a separate trip. And who wants to spend all day in traffic?
Right. We want to get where we're going as fast as possible.
Exactly. And that's what this method does. It reduces those database trips, which, in the world of web development, translates to faster loading times and happier users, especially when you're dealing with, like we said, massive amounts of data.
So it's like taking the express lane on the data superhighway.
You got it.
Yeah.
Now let's shift gears for a second and see how this super efficient stored procedure plays nice with PHP.
Because even the best chef needs the right tools to whip up a masterpiece.
Exactly. The PHP snippet we have here shows how to use PDO to talk to our stored procedure.
PDO. Now, that might sound a little intimidating to folks who are new to this. Can you give us a quick breakdown? What is PDO?
Sure. Think of PDO as the universal translator between your PHP code and different databases.
So it's breaking down the language barriers so everyone can understand each other.
Exactly. In this case, it's helping PHP talk to our MySQL database and execute that stored procedure we were just admiring.
Bridging the gap. Love it.
Right on. So looking at the code, you'll see that it starts by including a file called config.php. That's where all the juicy database connection details are stored.
Config.php, the secret vault of database credentials. Good practice to keep those tucked away separately.
Absolutely. Next up, we set up a few variables that act like the control panel for our pagination. We decide how many records we want to show per page using limit.
So how many items we want on each page. Got it.
Then, we figure out what page we're currently on with page. And finally, we do a little math to figure out where to start fetching records from the database. That's our start variable.
Setting the stage for PDO to work its magic.
Precisely. And now for the grand entrance, the PDO prepared statement. This is where we summon our getStudentsAndCounts stored procedure and hand over those start and limit values we carefully calculated.
Wait, hand over securely, right? What makes this way of passing values more secure than just, tossing them over the fence?
Excellent point. We're talking about security here, which is always crucial. Prepared statements are like using a super secure courier service to deliver those values to the database.
Instead of just shouting them across the street and hoping for the best?
Right. They protect us from something called SQL injection vulnerabilities, which is a whole other deep dive. But long story short, prepared statements are the way to go for safe and sound data handling.
Got it. Prepared statements, secure data delivery. So, we've sent off our request with our trusty courier. What happens next?
Well, PDO, like the efficient messenger it is, retrieves the results from the database. All that lovely student data is now ready for us to use.
And what about that total record count? For our pagination links. We haven't forgotten about that, have we?
Not a chance. This is where PDO pulls another trick out of its sleeve, the next rouset function. Remember how our stored procedure is sending back two things? The student records A and D, that total count.
Like a delicious meal with a side of, extra efficiency?
You got it. Next rouset lets us jump to that second set of results, that total count, without breaking a sweat.
PDO, the gift that keeps on giving. So we have our neatly organized student data, our total record count. We are ready to paginate.
Almost. There's one last piece of the puzzle. Actually creating those page 1, 2, 3 links you see at the bottom of the page.
Right. Those links are key. But before we get to the grand finale of pagination, I want to hear more from our expert. From your perspective, what makes this combined stored procedure and PDO approach so powerful?
Well, it's elegant, isn't it? It just tackles so many common web development headaches head-on.
I'm all ears. Give me those aha moments.
First off, it's like putting your database on a high-speed diet. By fetching the data and the count in one go, we're cutting down on all that back-and-forth chatter that can really slow things down.
Less talk, more action. I like it.
And, this approach, it just naturally leads to cleaner code, which, as any developer will tell you, is a beautiful thing.
Oh, absolutely. Clean code makes everyone happy.
By keeping that complex pagination logic tucked away neatly in the stored procedure, our PHP code becomes much more readable, much easier to maintain. It's like having a well-organized workshop where everything has its place.
I love that analogy. A place for everything and everything in its place.
Exactly. And the best part is, this approach is so darn adaptable. It's not a one-trick pony. It can be tweaked and tailored to handle all sorts of pagination scenarios.
So we're not just talking about student databases here. Where else would this technique really shine?
Oh, think big. Those mega e-commerce sites with products galore. This can make browsing through those listings lightning fast. Or social media feeds that seem to never end. This keeps that scrolling smooth as silk. Anytime you see seamless pagination in action, there's a good chance this kind of clever coding is at play behind the scenes.
Wow, that's like the unsung hero of smooth user experiences. I love it. Any parting words of wisdom for our listeners who are ready to supercharge their applications with this technique?
Here's a thought to ponder. We've been focusing on MySQL, which is a relational database. But what about those NoSQL databases out there, like MongoDB or Cassandra? They're all about handling massive data sets, but they have their own quirks. Figuring out how to adapt this concept for those environments, that's where things could get really interesting.
Now, that is a challenge worthy of the best coding minds out there. And on that note, we've reached the end of our deep dive into the world of efficient PHP pagination. A huge thanks to our expert for taking us on this journey.
My pleasure. It's been a blast.
And to you, our listeners, may your code be clean, your applications blazing fast, and your users happy campers. Thanks for joining us.